In this video, I'm going to show you how the scoring system works in our platform and to give you a brief overview of a few things to think about when scoring an interview. So in this case, we have Kim that we just had an interview with. We add a lot of comments during the interview, and we finished the interview, but now we're going back to the interview after the interview was completed to make the scoring. And this is a recommendation that we give to try and set off time after the interview in order to go back and actually look at your notes and compare them towards the criteria to make a fair assessment. It's very hard to make a scoring during the interview. It's of course possible, but there's a lot of things to think about when conducting an interview. Asking questions, asking follow-up questions, taking notes, making sure the candidates feels comfortable, and so on. So sometimes it might feel a bit overwhelming to also have to think about scoring. So don't worry, leave it till after the interview and then come back to it. Just make sure you have enough time to do it. That's actually a recommendation that we give. But in this case, we had an interview with Kim, as I said, and in order to get to the scoring, we press the edit responses, choose language, and then we get to the interview stage. And in this case, we did finish result oriented, but we see here that planning is not scored. So let's go to that question and go through how a competency-based question work in a system, how the scoring works. Okay, so we have the question. We have my notes here that I added. Can actually do this and of course make it as a note or a bullet point instead. We see here that it was planning that we try to assess. We can actually hover and we can see the definition of it. We have the question, we have the follow-up questions. Okay, so my job now when trying to score the interview is to look at the notes that I've taken and compare it to the behavioral anchor rating scales or criteria that we set down below. And how this works and how our system works is that we decided to break down planning into smaller parts. And in this particular scenario, we've broken it down to a question. And this question was also broken down into 3 parts that we're trying to assess with this question. So this one was about structure and planning. So something that was very important for this role. Then we tried to make it so each row here actually represents one part of planning and structure. And the first one is about having a clear goal in mind and sort of dividing it down into sub-goals. That's one very important aspect of being good at planning. The last one is, of course, do you have a process and organization to make sure that those sub-goals and goals were met? So did you have a way of thinking, how will this go and how will I do this, setting up the process? And the last one is to take into consideration both short and long-term consequences. We think that these 3 ingredients make up a great behaviors for being a good planner and organizer. So your job then is to look at the notes and then look at the behavioral anchor rating scales and actually choose the one that you think fits with the candidate's answer. So here, in instance, we have had a very clear goal in mind and several well-defined goals. If we think that, yeah, this person really did really well on that, had a very clear goal in mind and had divided that into smaller, more defined goals to work towards the big overall goal, we can press that one. Poof. And then we go to the next one, which is, okay, so how is the organization? Well, it was not super clear how they were going to get this. So they had clear goals in mind, but not really the way to get there. I had some level of organization and follow up on the work throughout. So some kind of process, not super clear, and that was not well defined. And the last one is, did you take into consideration both the long-term and short-term consequences? And then we think, yeah, the person really did think about what the consequence would be, not just right now, but also what would be the long-term consequences of the planning that they did. Boom. And then we get the score of a 4. We can, of course, change this, thinking maybe I was a bit too nice. Maybe actually it was more of a 3. Then it changes into a score of 3. And we can simply untag and tag it up. And that provides a score. And it's also a suggestion. You can also actually, if you want to, you could have it like this. And you can do it like that, saying like, even though it was not the best consideration, it had it, and I still see it as a 5. So you can do that. Make sure that you compare it to the notes that you made. So that's how a competency-based question looks like. Let's go to another one, which we have here, which is a hard skills question. They're quite similar. So you have your notes. We don't have any right now, but this is just a demonstration. But instead of only having scores on 1, 3, and 5, we have it on all of them. And this follows a logic. So In this case, we're trying to assess how well the person knows how to use a CRM system. And it goes from novice all the way to expert. So it's slightly different rating scales. And we have definitions below that helps us understand where should we put this candidate? Which level do we think that they are? Are they, immense understanding of how it works, know how to prioritize the problem, apply relevant pieces of skill regardless of context, and has a holistic view into the decision making and how to use a CRM system? If you think that's the case, then that's an expert, for instance. And you can actually change these. If you look at the chat that we did on how to create questions, you can make very specific ones. And we can actually use the contact management as an example. Here we've defined very clearly what we mean between a novice and an expert. So in this case, we decided that a person that is a high-level expert in contract management is someone who has great understanding and experience of how contract management works, can easily and independently draw up and write relevant contracts, understand which parts must be included in a contract. So that's our definition of an expert. So this should just help you in guiding you in which score to give. And then, of course, we have other types of questions where we don't really have a definition. We just simply have a scoring from 1 to 5 and stuff like that. And that is the same also for experience. It's only low experience to high experience. So a little bit easier since compared to hard skills and competency-based questions. But the overall goal for you is, of course, to look at your notes, compare them to the evaluation criteria you're trying to assess, and make a fair judgment of the candidate and assess them. And then when you're done, of course, you go to the bottom and complete the interview. And then you will have an update on the specific scores. So in this case, we didn't score all of them, but we have now at least scored planning and result oriented. We still have communication left to score. So that's how you score and all the things you need to think about. Good luck.